Yeah, let's get started. And it looks like we're slowing down and there's a good number of people in here. So, I guess kind of first of all, welcome everyone and thanks for making it to our November meeting. It feels like we've had like a couple of quick meetings in succession, but this is a pretty big update. So excited to see what we have here. I guess order of business number one is just hopefully everyone had a chance to look at the meetings. And does anyone want to make a motion to approve the meetings, the meeting notes summary?
I think Scott does.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I actually wasn't here last month, so it's
Oh, you
not
can't.
appropriate.
Uh,
Otherwise, I jump right in.
I think um, Jason and Catherine and Ken maybe were the three that were here, and then we had different members otherwise.
So this is
But
Ken.
can I make a motion to?
Yeah,
Right,
I'll
you can make
second.
a motion. I'll second it. It seems like I'm always doing that, so I didn't want to give someone else a chance.
Thank you.
Uh,
All right. So I think we
And
have a motion.
I think Ken was talking too, but I just wanted to make sure that he knows that we can hear him.
Oh, you can hear me.
We can, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I can.
I
Okay, so I think we had a motion and a second for the meeting notes, meeting summary. So I guess from there, we have our next topic.
Yeah, we can, Jason, if you want to turn it over to C. Terrence Anderson to kind of just give a little bit of an update on what to expect in the coming weeks and months as he gets his work started off with a shorter update tonight, but just want to keep everybody appraised to kind of the development of the work.
Yeah, excited to hear an update from C. Terrence.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason and committee members. It's really good to be with all of you here again tonight. I preemptively apologize if one of my kids comes running through the screen screaming. It's just the sort of thing that happens at 6 o'clock at night. Yeah, I'm really excited. So we're beginning our work, or we're really at the very beginning of this work. But we've been working with Hennepin County, the Met Council, quite a bit over the past month as we're sort of onboarding into the project, and we're sort of gearing up at Kira along with the other folks that we're partnering with to really sort of deliver a powerful beginning of this project. And so it's been really good. Of course, I think a lot of the information, I'm sure a lot of you know now too, of course, with these recent, more particular alignments that have been revealed. Hopefully y'all are making it to the open houses as well, or been engaging this information. But just generally getting a sense of where each of our different organizations are. And another thing that I've been up to on the second point of connecting with community stakeholders, it's something I need to do with a lot of you, or if not all of you, but starting to have one-to-ones, really, just sitting down, having coffee with folks, meeting different folks in their organizations, just to sort of gauge where they're at in the context of the Blue Line overall, and of course to get a better sense of when we say we want to do anti-displacement work, what do you mean by displacement, right? And so I think it's really important to sort of establish these expectations or these curiosities very early on, because we might say displacement and some folks might just mean in the context of residences or businesses, but other folks might be thinking about cultural displacement or different aspects as well. And so as we're sort of framing that up and really getting clear about our research agenda, clear about all the different concerns or interests that folks might have along this project, we're really just starting with that relational aspect of building out this work, so that, of course, right, folks feel a lot of sense of feeling seen and heard about what's going on. So I know there's a number of emails in my inbox. I've got a ton of emails very quickly coming on to this project, but I fully intend to get back to everybody. And if you haven't reached out to me, I'm going to reach out to you about us sitting down and having that one-to-one, or sitting down with you and your neighbors, sitting down with you and the organization that you're a part of, to do that same sort of thing as we prepare this. The next, really big thing, of course, I'm sure what y'all are waiting for is like the creation of this anti-displacement table. It's something we want to, get the call out for very soon, and we're just really getting our ducks in a row. That includes our ducks in order with all of you in the formation of that group, but I think that's something for y'all to look out for very soon. And in that mindset, really just getting a sense for what folks' expectation might be around who sits at that table. And right, I mean, there's making sure that it's representative of all the different communities that are along the corridor, business interests, folks who have experienced anti-displacement. Also sort of before we just put out a communication, really setting up our communication to do that really well, right? We don't want just a small subsection of our community to hear about this, but getting the folks who are stakeholders in this project, which includes all of you, to get that call out in a way that everybody feels invited, and setting up a fair process to get folks at the table. There's a ton of interest, which is great. Ultimately, we want to get to around a 15 to 20 member table at the end of the day. And so just figuring that out with all of you, with Hennepin County, with the Met Council and the different cities along the route on the best way to do that. So before we just kind of haphazardly, that's a word that I write more than I say, before we haphazardly sort of put out that call to do that, just really making sure that folks trust that process. We have a similar set of expectations about what that table can be. So that's something I'd love to talk to you about if and when we do our one-to-one, and that would be great. The other part is just getting this big engine roaring, right? And so there's a lot of administrative setup on our side we already know some of the research studies that we have to do. We already know, building out the relational infrastructure around this project. This aspect of organizing for research and this engagement work, I think, is something that's really important. As much as we can, right? We want to which includes, hiring at Kira or hiring graduate research assistants at the University of Minnesota as we sort of built out our research team, as well as sort of really connecting and getting a set of shared expectations with different organizing groups, including the cohort of folks that have been hired by the Met Council and Hennepin County, sort of to really set up the apparatus to connect, say, this alignment conversation with this anti-displacement working group. So all this stuff may sound really, really boring, but I think it's what, becomes really the foundation to a strong process over these next, will probably be years, right? And of course, we know there's 18 months within the scope of this current work, but, it goes beyond that, I'm sure. And so we're really laying that foundation for good organizing and community, a good research team, to sort of execute all the different research interests, both that have already been laid out and what I'm still hoping to hear from y'all if y'all have been thinking about that. So it's been a good month. I think Hennepin County Met Council feels the same way, and hope folks in community do as well. And rest assured, if you haven't felt connected to us yet, that it's fully in our intentions to do so, particularly over this next month. And so if you haven't got an email from me to set up a time, you'll get that very soon. And if you sent me an email, know that I have seen it, and I'll get back to you to set up that time for us very soon too. So it's been great. Yeah, hopefully I know, Kathy, you set up the because I was a little bit late to the BAC meeting. Hopefully I didn't miss any points that you brought up, because I'm sure you did wonderful as well. But of course, if any questions that y'all have, I'd love to answer as well.
I have a question for you, C. Terrence, of
Sure.
course. What is the goal of the table, and doesn't it already exist in a different form or a different organization? So how is this table different?
Right. That's a good question. Yeah. So, one, of course, it was prescribed in terms in the context of our contract with Hennepin County and the Met Council, that this anti-displacement group would be distinctly formed as part of this process. So I think the first question that you asked was just like, how might it be different from other tables? I think you're right. One, there are. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
working on, I mean, I work with the Blue Line Coalition, I mean, and
Right.
a number of other organizations, as well
Mhm.
as being a member of the CAC for many years. So I'm trying to figure
Right.
what what is the goal of this particular table? How is it different than all of the other organizations, either in their entirety is where they've focused, or as a
Sure.
subset group looking at the Blue Line. So I'm trying to
Right.
get an idea of what's different, or
Right.
what's the goal of this, as opposed to what other organizations have been doing around the Blue Line over the years.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a good question. And I think there's some balancing that has to, because I think you're right. There are tables that exist that talk about anti-displacement, of course, including the Blue Line Coalition, obviously the CAC, the BAC, and the Corridor Management Committee have been talking about those as well. And I think in a broad sense, all those existing tables will be connected to this anti-displacement table itself in terms of, right, all the different in terms of who's participating in the say the qualitative research, like the different interviews that we're doing, will be a part of, hopefully, I would expect, getting the information that's developed out of our processes, our research processes and different things around that too. I think the distinct in my understanding, and Kathy, Sophia, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, my distinct understanding is that this anti-displacement table will be making a recommendation specifically about the anti-displacement investments and policies to address displacement as a result of the Blue Line extension. Now, that's my understanding. I don't, I'm not aware of if that's sort of the charge of the CAC, the BAC, or any of the other committees. And of course, right, the Blue Line Coalition and the different individual members have had and already have recommendations around that. I think in my mind, this is sort of the formal process within the project to, to make those recommendations and of course, to get the response of different policymakers around those different recommendations or demands, depending on who you're talking about, and for it to be documented within the context of the overall project development. I
No,
could be wrong. Oh,
I understand. I mean, it's just that with all these different groups, from the Connect Blue Line now to a number of other organizations, if there's
sure.
representation from all of those groups, and there won't be room for community members at this table.
Yep, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I would imagine that members of each of those different tables potentially would end up as members. Some of those folks would end up as members at this formal anti-displacement working group that's been created in the context of our contract with
Right,
the
but I mean, I
region.
would prefer to see community members instead of them.
Oh, sure. Sure. Well, thank
I
you for
mean,
this.
so
I
I don't
mean,
know how other folks feel about that. I mean, I would like to
yeah,
see actual community members as opposed to the formal group, so to speak.
sure.
So I'm just curious as to what approach this anti-displacement table will take if we're talking about those groups. But we can talk about it over
Well,
coffee.
let me say that I appreciate it because again, as I was saying, organizing for research and engagement work and hearing from each of you about what your expectations and what you view as a valid process is exactly the process that we're in right now. So to be clear, right, the anti-displacement work group and its design has not been fully created. We're in that sort of engagement phase of like what do folks like yourself and other community members think is the best version of that group. And so I receive what you're saying as input into the creation that we need to take seriously in the creation of that group. So it hasn't been formed, it hasn't been decided, the rules haven't been made, other than, of course, making the recommendations at the end of the process. And so I fully receive what you said, Ms. Fleming, so I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any other questions for C. Terrence? Obviously, sounds like there's some need for connecting individually, and the offer that he made. And I know many of you are deeply connected to this work already, and so we will make sure that with this topic comes back to the BAC-CIC basically on a regular basis, so that you are all apprised to the process and have ability to kind of weigh in as we're going through, and kind of as kind of Catherine said it, kind of connecting these tables, right, to this work in this into this formal process. So Jason, I don't know if I don't see any other hands from the committee. I think we might be ready to move on.
To move on. Yeah.
Thank you, C. Terrence.
Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight for the update.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do have to run, so feel free, of course, to send me an email. Mom's at the hospital tonight, so I've got the kids tonight, so I got to run and do that. But I hope y'all have a great meeting. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he meant working. Versus,
Yes, working.
Yes, working.
Yeah.
She works
Yes.
out, so, correct.
Wanted to clarify. Okay. Well, anyways, thanks for joining us. Before we turn it over to Nick, Jason, just want everybody to feel like they can get geared up if they want to. So kind of some background for this presentation. There's a lot of Minneapolis information, and we've practiced trying to get it through it all in a virtual setting in a short amount of time, and it's kind of not possible. So just want to set up with everybody already that we are going to be providing kind of examples of the information that's there and really what we want people to kind of lean into and help give us feedback about. So, well, Nick is going to highlight a few examples. If you go to bluelineext.org, you can load our interactive map or download the PDFs and kind of start to scroll through them. So as Nick gets through his presentation, if there are any comments on particular segments or areas, or even kind of the alternatives, because some of the alternatives need some background, feel free to start scrolling through them, and we'll make sure Nick has plenty of time at the end to start to get to those. Last pitch before we get it to Nick too is a lot of this is very complex, and we're kind of showing it on an itty bitty screen. Being in person with us and seeing the big maps and seeing how they kind of all relate together and have it laid out is very helpful. So to the extent that any of you want us to come and meet with you with said images, just want to make sure that invitation is out there, almost like C. Terrence had as well, and just to come to some of the in-person stuff that we have coming up. For example, joining us on Tuesday at the Capri, or this Friday for office hours at the Episcopal Church facility. So with that, turning it over to Nick. Obviously, we'll go through the presentation, but if, feel free to start clicking through items on your own screen as well.
Well, all right. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Sophia, for setting it up. And I've counted so far already 3 invitations now to virtual open houses. I'm going to give you the 4th one. Really, what I'm going to be presenting tonight is just a high level of what we'll have available at the virtual meetings. We'll have everything spread out in a room, so we can go look at all the alternatives side by side. Put post-it notes on those. Just get a good context. It's a lot easier to read that way. There'll be folks there that can walk through the information you're seeing and provide input and take your feedback on that. So those are very handy to go to and really encourage you to do this. As Sophia mentioned too, we found that this will probably take quite a few bites at the apple to be able just to get all this information to soak it up and really be able to contemplate how it fits within each route to bring up an informed opinion on a route, or informed ideas on which routes that you would think which route you think would be the best. So again, the purpose of these November workshops as we're rolling forward is to show how LRT can fit and serve the community with just basic design details. We are at about 10%, or not even 10%. We're at about 2 to 5% design on all these plans. So they're at a very high level design. In some cases, they might look like they're really developed, and they really aren't. There's a lot of detail that when we get into design in the next year after a route is selected, we will be really rolling up our sleeves and spending a good 1.5 to 2 years on that design. And bringing something forth that's buildable. But at this point, it's really to see, okay, how in context would light rail, roadways, sidewalks fit within each one of these alignments, and then a lot of the details that will follow later, like green space and different pedestrian connections and stuff. These again are intended to help us move forward with the route selection. So what we're really focusing on is having people get a good picture of what these routes can look like, what our challenges is within each route, and what our opportunities are within each route. So it lays them side by side. These aren't the only, these are the alternatives that we're bringing forward to look at, but we're looking for input on ideas that to help refine these and help make things better as we move forward. So the feedback we're going to get from the virtual meetings like this and from the in-person workshops will be from those conversations, and they're going to help us inform a draft route report that we're going to bring out in December. So this draft report will have the data that we've pulled together to help produce the materials you've seen, and we'll have feedback that we're getting from some of the meetings like this, and it'll be in a form to let everybody look at how each route fits in comparison to goals, to the project goals, and we'll not have a recommendation in December. After that draft report will have a 45-day review period after it goes out, and then after that, in that 45-day review period, have some time to get that information together and help produce a final recommendation, that final report to the community alignment, and that's intended to come out in March. And then that report would also have a 30-day review period for folks to look at, review, comment on it. So some of the information we're going to have, like Sophia said, this is helping us as you go into the bluelineext.org, the project website. You can bring up this information in a couple different ways. There is a project coordinate out there within that where you can click on every one of the sections and areas and pull up the information that's there and look at it, comment on it, give some ideas, opinions that you may have on it. You can also pull up the PDFs of this where you can maybe manipulate those a little bit better, expand them, zoom in a little bit farther, move them around and see how things lay out. But how we've taken this, all this information, we've tried to put it into sections that are easier to kind of relate to geographical areas along each one of the routes. So we've organized it that way. Sections 1 through 4 are from Target Field Station up through Lindale to Broadway and up to where Broadway and Lowry intersect with County Road 81. So section 1 is the section coming off of Target Field Station up to about Plymouth Avenue. Section 2 is the section of Lindale Avenue between Plymouth and West Broadway. Section 3 is a segment along West Broadway from Lindale to Irving. And then section 4 is Irving up to, again, relatively, just basically North Memorial area. Sections 5 through 7 relate to the Lowry Washington alignment. And again, section 5 is that link area that gets us from Target Field Station up to roughly around Plymouth Avenue. And then section 6 is along Washington Avenue from Plymouth up to Lowry. And then section 7 would be along Lowry Avenue from Washington over to that North Memorial intersection with West Broadway and County Road 81. So let's move on to, and if there's any questions here, please stop me, raise your hand or whatever, ask a question. I'm going to try to be conscious of stopping and asking for any questions as we go. So far, any questions? All right, we'll move into the next one here. So just some of the highlights that you're going to see in these segment maps and what we've done with the segment map is, if everybody remembers that we've simplified the link area. So we talked about the project links coming out of Target Field Station and either to a West Broadway or to a Lowry route. And on this map, that's the box that's shown in yellow, that link area. And we used to have what we referred to as the rainbow spaghetti in there, where we had quite a few different alignments and links going. And as we've started to roll up our sleeves, work with our project partners, taking a look at what the available right of way is out there and how things fit within just operationally, we've really started to narrow those links down, and some of those connections have kind of dropped off the board because they maybe didn't make a lot of sense or really weren't viable operationally, or just how they fit within the community in those areas. As we get up into the Washington Avenue route, you'll see that there's going to be route options that will include 21st Avenue parallel to West Broadway. So that's kind of in that section 3 area. And then we have a couple of options for how the bridges that I think folks have seen most of the bridge options as we get up into the connection from either West Broadway and Lowry to County Road 81 by North Memorial. So diving a little bit farther into the same map with sections. So this kind of helps show where the sections are, and within each section, we're bringing forward multiple alternatives so folks can see what the challenges are in a section and some of the opportunities, and the alternatives help out with that. That some of the alternatives might have quite a few property impacts. So we brought forward alternatives to try to minimize property impacts and try to fit a little better within the community. So I guess in the middle of the map, I think one that's very apparent is that section 3 from Lyndale Avenue to Irving. We have about 5 different alternatives in that area to bring forward to show how things will fit, and and some mitigation for impacts that different alternatives may have in there. And we'll take a closer look at that as we go through this presentation. One thing to know, we don't need to, at this point, we're really trying to pick either a West Broadway or a Lowry route. This is really to see, for folks to be informed of how things could fit in there, to get a more informed opinion or idea of how each one of the routes will work. The alternatives can continue to move on with that route as we start going into design. We don't have to specifically pick an alternative, although if you have an idea or opinion on it, that would be helpful. But it's really those alternatives can keep carrying forward as we go into design after that March timeframe when we have a recommended route.
Nick, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Catherine.
How does those alternatives relate to station locations? I mean, when you're talking about these alternatives, are they related to station locations, or they're outside of station locations, or what?
Catherine, as always, you're thinking ahead of me. So yes, exactly. You're hitting the nail on the head. Some of these alternatives really have to do with station locations. So some of them will be geometry of roadways and how things fit in, but a lot of times the impacts are going to be where station locations are, because obviously when you start putting the tracks in there are one thing, but then you put a station in the middle, you start widening things out, and property impacts become more. So in some of these alternatives, we'll have multiple station locations to show what the challenges are with that location, and if we can move it, what the opportunities and challenges are to be with another location. So on this map, I think in all those areas, those light blue ovals in here are station areas that are under consideration, and what we're looking at for potential station locations and reviewing and studying.
So how does that relate to our cost-effective index and our federal money? So I mean, usually, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, that one's kind of getting to be a question, Catherine. That's a little bit more farther out than where we're at. The CEI, the cost effectiveness index, and having to do with studies and travel time and track geometry and all that stuff. So there's going to be a lot of information. We'll start going into that after we have a recommended community supported route to move forward with. Then we'll start doing that environmental work with their initial design work, and from that we'll be doing the modeling that we need to do. We'll start looking at how stations go on. We'll start pulling in a more detailed cost estimate, and that'll all go into that information that will be needed for a few years out when we're looking to receive a record of determination on a project.
All
So
right, thanks, Nick.
short term, I'm not going to say we're not paying attention to that. We're just trying to determine what route we want to move forward with into our environmental work and preliminary design work. So the slide you're seeing here now, again, this is another pitch for our website. This is the public coordinate, and this is a great tool to be able to go in and find the information that you're looking for related to the section. So layouts for each section can be found by clicking on those blue numbers in there. Those blue numbers relate to the section. For instance, Sophia was up on Lowry circling section 7. If you click on that, that'll pull up some of the alternatives that we have on that alignment and show, again, the challenges and opportunities that are in there, along with the cameras. I think a lot of you may be familiar with, if you've surfed around in this, the cameras have some of the visualizations that we prepared, the bird's eye views, to see how things fit within in context of each one of those right-of-ways. You can go into this and you can directly comment on some of the design options, have a conversation with other folks. You leave those comments for us, that we keep a record of that. We look at those. We really do use that and value the input we get from those. You can also place icons on there and note issues or where you think opportunities could be along the alignment. So again, another plug. These are available within this public coordinates, an easy way to surf around and kind of see what other people are thinking and put your stuff into. But also within the project website, the bluelineext.org, you can also go in there and into engineering and design, and you can just pull out the PDFs and you can have a lot more information there. So
So
this is,
Nick,
I think, the last slide I have, the boring slide I have before we jump into a few examples.
Nick, you have a question from Ken. I think he's trying to.
Yeah, is my volume okay?
A little light, but I can hear you, Ken.
Okay. So I'm hearing a lot of visual landmarks, ovals,
Yes.
colors, icons to click on, numbers to click on. Have you done much work to make this accessible for someone who can't see?
I'll let Sophia answer this one, because I think the answer is yes, Ken, and I'll try to maybe be more descriptive with my descriptions as I'm going through the presentation also. Thank you for that, Ken. But Sophia?
Yeah, the interactive map has some basic features that can help guide folks. As like when it is like a welcome message and the some text explanation. Some of the maps get really difficult to put a lot of detail into. And so Ken, I think it might be worth a conversation with you, to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, because I'm also in my brain listening and thinking, I don't know how much extra work it's going to take to get information to conveyed to someone who's blind, visually impaired, to be able to get some valuable feedback from that individual. That sounds like it's going to cost a lot uh, and the value of the information you get back might not be as valuable as someone who can readily see a bunch of stuff at one time. But I wonder if there's a different way to do this, maybe with a small group of visually impaired individuals and somebody really spending a lot of extra time. Again, it's always balancing out what's the value and return that you're expecting. Um, is it worth all that extra effort to do at this point? Um, I also think maybe others that have more need to make a decision about some of these different options could make those decisions, and our input can come in at a later time when it would be more valuable?
You know, I think it's a really good idea to sit down with folks, and even if it's um, just one person or two people, I do think it's valuable. A lot of what Nick is going to be running through is, you know, trade-offs of how you place stations to minimize property impacts, or in one of our challenging some of our most or our more challenging sections, how you could use design to do kind of interesting things to avoid impacts, and kind of the trade-offs with that. Uh, I would say that even explaining the drawings, the two-dimensional drawings are really difficult, even if you can see them fully. We've been spending a lot of time, you know, just talking with people to kind of even go through the details and explaining what's in the key and what colors mean, and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot to take in.
Right.
Anyways, so I think the extra effort to because it's not extra effort, it's just the effort that we should be doing to get feedback from everyone is would be really valuable at this stage.
Okay.
I completely agree there. I think the time that we've spent, Ken, with you and other folks on this alignment, on this project and other projects, even the feedback we get on accessibility and design and stuff like that is invaluable. So you know, it is very important that we're reaching out to everybody, and I think that is something that we're going to strive to pull together and work on.
Okay.
So I can remember being out on University Avenue with you, Ken, and looking at crossings and discussing the design details, and I learned a lot from that kind of field trip. So
Yeah, thank you.
all right, so as we're moving forward, we'll finish up this last boring slide, but again, these are the caveats that this is being shown to help this decide a West Broadway or Lowry route, which one should be advanced here. And again, the alternatives that we're going to look at here can carry on with the alignment that's selected for further review and diving into farther. And as we get into design on either one of these alignment routes, you know, maybe new alternatives or new combinations of alternatives will start coming together, and we'll spend a lot of time in design on this. The details just making sure we get through everything here on this one. So the design, after we get going, I mean, we are just so early in design, and after that, those recommended routes are moved forward with, that's when we roll up our sleeves. That's when we're going to be working with the folks in our advisory committees, with the community, with our project partners to really dive in and do the actual design work on this. So and that'll be you know, it take a few years. It's a multi-year evolution to do that. The project team is going to take all the feedback we get through the end of November, and as we do, you know, through the whole project, we take the feedback, we take the comments, we listen to what folks are saying, and try to use that as we move forward. We'll go into the draft reports again. So the draft report again is December, with a 45-day comment period for folks to look at all the information, digest it, comment on it, and then we'll get it back, and then that'll help us move forward with the final report that will have a recommendation for a community-supported route. That again will be in that March timeframe, and we'll have a 30-day review period with it. So we're just going to show you a couple of examples. We're going to dive into a few sections here. One section up on Lowry, section 7, and then we're going to also look at section 3 at West Broadway, and look at a couple alternatives. So a lot of information here. So we're really just hitting the tip of the iceberg, but just kind of helping people to visualize, to understand what's available out there, and where to find it, and what material is that people are going to be able to look at. So next slide. So the first slide is just to talk about some of the elements that are on these drawings. I mean, these drawings are, again, very high level. The details that we have in there, this legend kind of walks through. We'll have the blue area is usually a light rail track. The yellow area will be where station platforms are. The gray is usually a roadway pavement or a medium pavement in there. Orange will represent a bridge. If you see red lines along there, will represent a retaining wall. The white areas show a sidewalk or trail, and those are usually going to be on the outside of the roadway or outside guideways. The key I think a lot of people have really been interested in is these design alternatives. How are these impacting properties, whether they're residential or commercial? And so what we're showing in pink are where an alignment has the potential of having a building impact. It's not just if we needed to have like a little strip of grass along a property to expand a sidewalk. We're not identifying those kind of impacts because we're just not that far in design. But where we think that there's a potential for a building impact, we're showing that building and that property in pink. So that can be seen as a challenge with that alternative of a route. Property lines are shown as dashed lines. On the roadways, we show proposed directional lane use. So, the through arrows for through lanes, the turn lane arrows. We also will have all the signalized intersections will have that traffic signal symbol on it with the red, yellow, green ball. The light blue is the actual LRT track where that would go. And then there's like a zebra stripe bar that will show, if an alignment would have an access closure, whether an existing driveway or maybe an alleyway would be closed. That's shown with that bar, just so folks can see that alternative may have that access impact. And then, of course, we're showing where some of our bus rapid transit stations are along the corridor and how those connections can be made for high frequency transit connections and coordination. So as we look at this section 7, so section 7 is Lowry Ave, up in Lowry Avenue, kind of in that middle portion of Lowry Avenue, and kind of this case focuses more on Emerson Fremont over towards Lindell Avenue area to show what the different options between what we are calling out as 7A-B and 7A-A. In this area along Lowry Avenue, we got a lot of challenges. There's not a lot of signalized intersections out there. So when we have a crossing of the light rail, we need to make sure that there's a signal at that intersection. So I think most of the existing signalized intersections would remain signalized with some of our design concepts we're pulling forward, but to make sure that we have adequate access through the city's grid system, we'll have to introduce a few more traffic signals in this area. So there'll be more traffic signals along Lowry as you look through the alternatives than there are today. And that's just so we can get traffic across in those areas. And with the signalized intersection, as we've discussed before, by having a signalized intersection, we know that on the roadway, we need to have left turn lanes so we don't end up with a dangerous situation across the tracks. Even if we don't put in a left turn lane, folks will want to take those at a signalized intersection, and it becomes dangerous with them turning in front of trains and not having a protected phase in that signal to turn at. So that by adding turn lanes in, that grows that roadway footprint out and has the potential for more property impacts by adding that.
Nick, one question.
Yes.
There's a number of one-ways streets between Lindale and Fremont. How are you taking those into account with this particular design?
Case by case. I think a lot of the one ways, I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself. I don't think we've proposed those well, I shouldn't say that. Emerson and Fremont are one way pair, and those are both signalized. But the signals are going in for those right now anyways with the D line BRT that's being constructed.
Yeah, there's some smaller streets too that
Yeah.
are one way.
Some of the smaller streets, Catherine, would probably be just they would only have that right out capability as they're coming in to a roadway or the right in off of the roadway. So those likely would not be throughways, but we need to look at spacing there to make sure we have adequate spacing for both the traffic flow for emergency vehicles to get through and the other thing that we'll need to look at is as pedestrian impacts. If we don't have a signalized intersection, we know that we can't go too far, more than a few blocks without having pedestrian crossings, so we have safe places for pedestrians to cross on the roadway. So we're not showing a lot of those pedestrian crossings that will get farther into design, but we know that pedestrian crossings have the potential to add some more of those property impacts because of the treatments we do at the crossings to make sure we have safe boxes that get people squared up with the track so they're looking at a train before they cross the track. So there's a little bit additional infrastructure that goes into that could have effect on property impacts. On Lowry Avenue, I think most of our options here are geometric, meaning how we adjust the roadway through here to fit through, or how we can slide a station around. And I think this gets kind of more towards one of your questions that you had earlier, Catherine, where have we looked at alternatives for stations? So this will be a good example of how we have looked at that. So we're going to take a look at section 7AA. This slide here is a good example of why this is really hard virtually. As you look at on this screen, we have a snapshot of that segment from Washington Avenue over to where it connects at County Road 81. It's a couple miles long in this section, and what we're showing here it's the detail is just really not even legible. It's so fine and it's so hard to read. So we're going to zoom in a little bit more in these areas and break it down and walk through it. And as you pull this information up on the website, you can zoom in quite a bit more and see some of the fine detail where the properties are, how things fit in, where the streets are. You can read the streets very easily on there. So this example that we're going to look at is on Lowry between James Avenue and Lindale Avenue, and it's shown in that dash box. So the segment 7AA, this is a good example of the items that we're showing on the key map. I think one of the things that will pop out to people right away, this is an at-grade center running light rail through here. So that is showing going between Lindale Avenue and James in this view, with the blue as the LRT guideway. You can see the roadway in the gray on the outside of it. Even at this detail where we're zooming in, it's a little bit harder to see how the traffic operations, but the arrows are there showing the direction of traffic and where the turn lanes are. You can on this one, the signalized intersections are shown at James Avenue, Fremont Avenue, Emerson Avenue, and Lindale Avenue. And with the station just to the west of Fremont Avenue. So, this is a great location for a station for those transit connections here. So this is why we're showing this, because, ultimately we want to put the station where those connections are happening. So we're building a very robust system, but you can see with this alternative, we do have quite a few property impacts that are shown in the pink. So as you get out there with the widening of the station and the turn lanes that are needed for each of these signalized intersections, it pushes back, blocks beyond where the feature is, whether it's a station or a signalized intersection, and that's where you'll see the pink properties that are potentially impacted here. So, and again, those pink properties would show the potential for a building impact So the green boxes you see around some of those properties, oh, can we go back? The green boxes that you see around a lot of these properties, those indicate publicly owned properties, just to give folks an idea. Hennepin County owns some properties out there. The city would own some properties out there. You know, it's around like the regional library and things like that. I should stop there. Can we go back and any questions on that map? Because this is where we're starting to get into a lot of information, and this is where it gets really a lot to digest.
Nick, this is Peggy Sue. I just had a question of like, I guess like a hierarchy or criteria on decision making. I don't know if you're at that point yet, but I'm just wondering like how, like what's the hierarchy, right? Like of like public, the public feedback versus like building impacts versus, you know, any other criteria. How does that ranking get decided?
Well, I think public feedback, Peggy Sue, is very important to us. I mean, we really haven't, I guess, categorized it other than we have our project principles, and some of our project principles are to minimize, property impacts as much as we can. So I mean, that is really a key thing as we're looking at this, and as we go into the alternative, you can see why we offered up an alternative here. I think it'll make it a little bit more apparent. So I'm kind of showing you here a more impactful solution. Not that it's a solution that's off the board, but if we went with the station configuration we showed there, what those impacts would be. So we're going to look at another alternative here. This is section 7AB. This is same area. It's between Knox Avenue and 3rd Street, but I think the key is we took that station and slid it down towards Lindale where there's a little bit more room. So if we could go to that slide. So this is image. There's a couple images here because of the amount of information, and it covers an area that's a little bit larger. But this one, this is image 2 of 2 in that area of segment or section A/B, and this one really is pretty much the same center running alignment of the light rail down Lowry Avenue, but moving the station just to the west of Lindale, and around Lindale Avenue, there's quite a bit of right of way that's publicly owned or is part of the roadway right of way, and it's kind of a green space park right now. So with the station in this location, gives us a little bit more room to expand out the roadway and fit that signalized intersection in there. And you can see in this area, there's really not the pink or those building impacts that were shown before in this location. So this is an example of how we're bringing out alternatives. The last alternative maybe had the better transit connection at Emerson Fremont. This one would still have a good connection, to Lindale, but it would have a little bit less of those building impacts. So can you go back to image 1 of 2?
Yeah, Nick, and I'd also say I think this is to Peggy Sue's point. I think this is a really good example about how the project team can talk about how these options match up to project criteria. For example, one might be better at minimizing property impacts, while another might connect better to the regional transit network. But this is also where the community can help put value around those ratings, right? Like, so when you're thinking of a project that serves people and serves the existing community, help us through that process. And that's where and part of why we have these alternatives is this is where community input really can influence the decisions that we make, right? So while we're basically trying to put forth workable options for either route. And then, once we select that route, that is where we want to center community engagement in selecting which one of these options moves forward with that design. Because for the project team, we believe all of what we're showing works and in different ways meets the various pieces. And ultimately, a lot of the community feedback of what's easier to connect to, what folks think best match the community vision, we really want to hear that, and we take it, we prioritize it, and as part of our decision making. We can tell you the facts. We can tell you the facts, but it's good to have the values.
Yep.
With that in mind, can I ask a quick question just around that community feedback? Like, I mean, you can see, well, not in this slide, but in the previous slide with the pink, that there are definitely building impacts. Like, are those businesses and homes or that land, are they communicated to specifically, or like, how do you get a different and or more community feedback to place value on, like, this is better even though it might have more building impacts, this is better because it doesn't, and it still is good enough as far as access or whatever? Like, how do you?
So two pieces with that, and I can kind of answer that. Is one, our efforts to reach people now, and secondly, the time frame in which we have to make these decisions and kind of the length of community engagement we can have on some of these. And so one, you know, as we rolled out this information, we wanted we consider kind of number one stakeholder are those that live immediately adjacent to our alignment, right? So if you're abutting the corridor, whether your property is in pink or not, you're number one stakeholder in terms of us needing to connect with you. So I've been a little bit slow with email the last 5 days, and that's because I've literally not been in the office. We have door knocked every single property. In some cases, the residential, we flyer because, you know, people are working during the day and like it's bamboozling to get something coming to your door. But we've, especially the pink properties, tried to at least make contact. They also all, if they showed up in pink, they also received a letter from the project office with my contact information, inviting them both to the workshops and to connect individually. And then we have been trying to get the word out to the broader community, basically in every way that we can possibly think of. So whether that's use of social media, ad buys, kind of the both radio and print advertising, especially those that target BIPOC communities, and then just our normal like email communication, and then the community cohort has also been helping get the word out and really amplifying the work of project staff. For example, my social media, I've seen the West Broadway Business Coalition and their Facebook posts pop up like almost every day on my Facebook feed. If I'm on social media, that they can try to take a little bit of break from social media. But anyways, I mean, that just really, the community cohort has really been amplifying, and we've been trying to go to organizations as well to further that word. And then I know we've said it like multiple times, but I think it's really important to drive that message. Is the question really on the table is, based on this information, how does that influence people's decision of whether we're going West Broadway or Lowry? Have we presented workable options? And then all these design details for like exactly where stations need to get placed, and all these important things like pedestrian connections and making sure everything works and all that kind of stuff. We have over a year to further that engagement and make sure that we are talking to all of these folks on this route. So, you know, this is why Nick has said like multiple times, like we can bring, for example, 7AA and 7, if we chose Lowry, we could take 7AA and 7AB all the way through our environmental process, as well as some of our early design work to make sure that we are choosing the right option between the two. And on West Broadway, there's even more. And you could maybe, when we get to one of those sections, there's even more. Nick said there's like 5 or 6 options. There might be a whittling down of those options based on early community feedback, but you could basically bring them all through so that you can provide the community a lot more detail and work a lot more with those individual property owners before you make your final design decisions.
So Sophia, following up on Jason's comment, are you taking the primary feedback from the property owners or the renters?
So both. So letters went both to every tenant address, as well as the taxpayer. So, and obviously door knocking, you're trying to talk to the person that is physically in that space. So we have spent quite a bit of time with small business owners over the last couple days, just kind of going through things. I don't know, Joan is on the call, and she spent literally almost an entire day on two blocks of West Broadway and Penn. So
I,
it
I understand that, but I mean, who is going to be the primary decision maker, the property owner or the renter?
So the decision maker of what we go forward with is the Met Council in Hennepin County. We would take the feedback from all those involved. And often, a big decision of like where a station gets placed, it's not an individual property owner. It's many folks in the area, as well as the overall regional benefit.
Right, and secondly, Nick talked about a station at Lindale. Why can't you have station at Lindale and Fremont or Emerson?
I'm back now, so sorry about that. I lost internet, so I'm tethering right now. I think the question, Catherine, why we wouldn't have them so close is they start to become fairly close. I mean, typically in a light rail, we're not commuter rail, so we're not miles apart or cities apart in stations. Typically, a rule of thumb is about every mile to 3/4 of a mile,
Right.
depending on density. So as you start getting less than 3/4 of a mile, if you're in downtown area where there's just a lot of people and a lot of destinations, you would put closer stations. But in instance Lowry Avenue, there probably isn't that density for both stations, and what happens is by adding more stations, you have more dwell time, you have more time to alignment, and it starts reducing ridership because it's
Yeah, I think one of the best ways also, Catherine, that we can answer your question is Jason saw these at Robbinsdale, but we have walk shed images that show how long it would take you to walk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That kind of stuff in that 5-10 minute range is definitely the sweet spot for light rail. And especially in that 5 minute walk shed, you don't necessarily want to be overlapping them in terms of a light rail service. So station placement, how many stations? I think that's a really great topic for our future meetings, especially as we do the evaluating criteria that we can bring back to specifically address and talk further about.
Sounds like a plan.
So just one quick follow-up and then we can get going. And unless there are other questions too, I do want to address those. But just it sounds like there's been a lot more interaction going into the community, door knocking, flyers, that leaflets, and all of those things are happening. Are you getting is there an increase in feedback? Like, are you getting more responses now after that work has started to happen, or would you say it's like pretty consistent with the responses we've had so far?
We've literally talked to hundreds of people. Yeah.
Okay, so it's going up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the principle of going where folks are, and that was the same, for in Robbinsdale, for properties that were if we show up, or Crystal or Brooklyn Park or whatever it is, kind of those properties that abut that alignment, really trying to do that face to face right away. Whether people decide to come to workshops, I don't know. We'll see how many folks show up. But in terms of talking to people and putting a robust program together to hear, that's definitely part of our plan. And some of it is just 5 minute conversations, right? You go into a hair salon and somebody's literally cutting somebody's hair, and you talk for 5 minutes about some options and kind of get their initial gut reaction, and then off you go. But that's just part of building on our continued conversation, and why having this information available and then refining it over a long period of time also lends to getting into the really specifics of all of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, questions on section 7 or on this example of Lowry Avenue we have, or we could probably move to our next section. So section 3, this is another example that we're bringing up of section 3. This is again on West Broadway in between Irving and Lindale, and we've got quite a few design concepts here, and they're really as we did what we would call our baseline design with everything going down West Broadway, with keeping traffic there, putting LRT on there. In this segment, there was the potential for quite a few building impacts, because the buildings are so much closer. They're right up to the right of way. The sidewalk is right behind the curb. It goes right up to the building faces. So, a lot more dense, a lot closer to the right of way, and some of the geometrics are along here too. With the different humps and curves through the road, it makes it a challenge. So. The necessary turn lanes. We have a lot of signalized intersections through here that we are proposing to maintain if we have a alignment through here. And so those are some other key factors. And our alternatives here are not just focused on the geometry, like we were up in Lowry, where we're kind of shifting things around or moving a station back and forth. We're also looking at operational adjustments, whether it be maybe we adjust LRT or traffic or split and do both to split of alignment between West Broadway and we'll show an example of West Broadway and 21st as being that operational adjustment. So next slide, please. So with the challenges in this area, we've put together some maybe a little bit higher level schematic drawings that are shown here. So this is an existing condition of how traffic operates today on West Broadway Avenue, and again we show 21st here and how that operates. There lanes of traffic in each direction on both of these roadways, and then we show the existing schematic or existing views of how it looks today, both at West Broadway. That this is one that we've shown before at Emerson and West Broadway, and then there's an existing photo of 21st at roughly DuPont, I believe. So next slide, please. So as we're diving into some of our alternatives along West Broadway, we're taking a look at West Broadway from Lindale to Irving again. And this option shows maintaining lanes of traffic in each direction, or a lane of traffic in each direction on West Broadway for vehicles, but then also putting in the light rail in this section. So this option or alternative 3AB shows what some of those impacts would be with the station. That's we're coming up Lindale. We're making the turn onto West Broadway. We're at center running at grade with West Broadway. We're showing a station at DuPont Avenue here. Again, it's very close to that Emerson Fremont BRT connections. That would be important. It's kind of the center of mass along this section of roadway too. So it's a logical spot to put a station there. We'd love to have it between Emerson and Fremont, but those are really a short block and it's not long enough to put a station in there. But with this, you can see that there are quite a few property and building impacts along this section because of that alignment and how it's laid out. So we've come up to take a look at some options here, and this is where we get into those operational options that we're showing. So we're taking a look, which this is another, just an example, section 3D/A. This is again in that area from West Broadway from Lindale to Irving. And what we're going to show here is options that keep the vehicle traffic on West Broadway. So 2 lanes of traffic in each direction on West Broadway, but in this option, bringing light rail up another block on Lindale and turning onto 21st and running the light rail alignment down 21st to Girard, and from Girard diagonally connect in back into West Broadway at Irving. So the schematic, that's what the schematic is showing. Here's the drawing with that. So there's still impacts with this alternative to the alignment here, the operational alternative, but we've limited quite a few of them by taking a look at this alternative. So again, the drawing shows on West Broadway, the lanes of traffic that are maintained through there, the sidewalks that are on there, and then bringing the light rail up a block with the station up centered basically on DuPont in between Bryant and Emerson in this location.
Kind of to note, and this is stuff that's come up in the community too, is just that we would, in this option, we are showing West Broadway being reconstructed. You know, kind of in thinking of things like the pedestrian environment and all of that. So, again, just feedback from the presentation for folks that are doing virtually, we're showing two options, but there's more for West Broadway that split the LRT and whatnot. Just wanted to give folks a feel of kind of the options and start getting those initial reactions. Happy for those that are that have assets on this section of West Broadway in particular to find time to go through all of the options.
On the presentation.
Catherine, did you have a question?
No, sorry, Sophia. I'll wait for you to finish. I was.
You take questions, yeah.
When you finish talking, I just wasn't sure.
Floor is yours.
No, I know that Ian and a few others were interested in this 21st Avenue alternative, what have you. I was curious as to whether or not it's been vetted by some of the other business owners along West Broadway, or any feedback.
Yeah, we've actually gotten some positive reaction about the option on 21st. So, you know, yes, this suggestion initially came from Ian. He, I think, had different ideas maybe of how it could fit into this space. But why we started to explore it was just when keeping everything on West Broadway, you had some impacts. And so as we started down that path of trying to minimize those impacts, this is some of the stuff that we came up with. You know, so you know, we would not, for example, have explored 21st if the options immediately just took out the entire block, right? Like, so if going down 21st had just, you know, basically taken that first row of houses to the north or something like that, we would not have brought it forward. But it as we kind of looked at some of the challenges of the area and wanting to give the community options, you know, to avoid impacts or do different things, this became a viable alternative to explore further. And we've had many conversations now already with some of the folks that own businesses or organizations along West Broadway, and some of the feedback that we've received actually has been that folks like this image that's on the screen right now, so bringing the station to 21st, or one that we don't have in the slide deck right now but is online, which basically splits eastbound and westbound light rail. And because that could, the kind of some of the feedback was that you have this large area of activation potentially, while also maintaining traffic to the businesses. This area, Ken, is a perfect example of where we have different operational considerations for light rail along in the pedestrian environment, and really getting into those details with you or others would, I think, bring a lot of value to the conversation. But I would say at the same time, while we got some early feedback, we have a lot more people to talk to. And again, we don't need to make a decision about whether we're going to 21st with the light rail in selecting a community supported alignment. We can do that later. But at least at this point, showing all these options, it's a disclosure, right? It's within these options right now, as we're looking at them, these are the impacts, right? So the community can, as well as our policymakers can look at that and make it more informed decisions, especially in the next month. And Sam will get to this later as we bring that full kind of evaluation criteria to accompany the technical drawings. I believe Adam has his hand. Oh, Catherine, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Any additional questions?
No, I mean, that's good. It looks like it has a minimum impact to the buildings, but whether or not it has the most benefit to the residents, I guess that's still an open question.
Yep. And one that we should discuss more as we go through this process. I think Adam's up.
Thank you. Two main questions. How does this alignment with the station being on 21st versus Broadway impact the other connection points to mass rapid transit, like the bus lines? And then the other question would be, I'll finish that and then I'll go to the other one. How about that?
Yeah, so you're moving the station about a short block, but a block away from where the D-line stops are. The stops are basically on right by Juxta's skate park on Emerson, and then down the block for the one-way pair.
The other question, I guess, is a broad question. I don't think this is answerable today. I'm just curious, does this alignment going on 21st generate the kind of updating that we're hoping for Broadway? Does this bring the revitalization of Broadway Avenue, or does this
it very much could, just because I think we'd also be looking at bringing the investment to redo the roadway. And if you really kind of focused, we've been out in community, I think we've heard a lot about kind of driving behavior in this area and also just pedestrian safety. I've spent a lot of time on the street. Also, in the last 5 days, I've literally walked up and down this segment that you see now, like 10 times, 5 times, many times over the last few days. And, kind of thinking about what that pedestrian environment is, that sidewalk experience, and then what else could come with it. Have had some really interesting conversations just about activating that street space. And if you're redoing sidewalks and potentially if you're, maybe if they're wider, there's been places around, I think the city where the city's done a really awesome job kind of making that streetscape really awesome. And hearing a lot of thoughts from folks on some of those pieces. So it at this level of design, right, we're not showing kind of what would some of those pedestrian connections look like? What else do we have to do to activate the station? I think that's all part of the conversation that would have to go forward in the next year, as we ultimately, if West Broadway is the path forward versus Lowry, or vice versa, if it's Lowry, then obviously the conversation's mute. But if it was what was selected, you would need to go into a lot more detail about how all of that works together to make it the best it possibly can be and accessible.
So just one more curiosity, we'll call it the strip mall that's right there, that's privately held, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Are they on board with a station in their backyard that would essentially make people walk through? I'm assuming they would like more business, but their storefronts face the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, it is putting the station what is the backside of a building, and I think we would need to have a lot more conversation about how to make that the best possible. You do have, multiple businesses in this. Like you have US Bank here, you have a kind of hair place, you have a laundromat, you have a lot of uses, and if you kind of go back to this option, we're in the front of their store, but we're potentially also getting into their parking lot a little bit. And either way, this whole strip mall will need a lot of focused conversation with the landowner and all the individual all the individual businesses to think about how that site works best.
And then by putting that station up on 21st, you're just furthering the walk to the only grocery store that would be accessible on this light rail.
Yes, you increase about a block to Cub Foods.
A block is a lot when it's a 78-year-old woman dragging a cart, and that's a lot.
Yeah, you're correct, Adam. But that's also why we have, we're just showing two of the, I think, at least 5 options that we have in this area. You know, I think we have quite a few of them that are shown on West Broadway that probably do focus more on the businesses there, Adam. But
and that's why we put forth, you know, splitting the light rail, potentially moving the traffic versus the train from West Broadway, and this is the heart of the conversation, right? Because you know, the project staff can make professional calls, but there's a lot of what brings the value to the community the most. And getting into those details really help narrow or select those options, especially when you add more detail to the design.
Thank you.
All right.
And I see, I think Peggy, Sue, Catherine, and Brett all have hands up. Maybe we'll go, Jason, I should let you lead this. Should we go Peggy, Sue, Brett, Catherine?
Sure. Yeah. Peggy Sue is up next.
Great. Thank you. I just was wondering what the feedback from the BAC has been on these West Broadway routes. I feel like there's sort of not, I don't know, I feel like that representation is mostly business owners from this segment of not necessarily 3D, but like West Broadway. So I'm just wondering how how those conversations have gone in terms of these routing options.
Did you say BAC with the BAC?
Yeah, with the business advisory group.
Yep. We did the same presentation with them yesterday, Peggy Sue, and we did have a few questions out there. You know, not a lot of input, not a lot of I guess strong opinion one way or another. But I would say, you know, again, it was the same presentation, so I don't think a lot of them had a chance to really dive into all the alternatives and look at what the challenges were within them. You know, where the impacts were or where the opportunities were. So. But I guess probably more of the one-on-one you've had, or you and your group, Sophia, would be more, I guess, indicative of those conversations.
Yeah, it's a lot to go, I think, into a little bit. We've been working very closely, kind of even offline with some of our BAC folks, and you know, there's combination of properties that have been highlighted to us for us to kind of think about how we address to, you know, things that Adam, you know, just brought up, and it, you know, I would say the way to summarize it is overall, folks want us to explore these options more. You start to get a lot of like gut reactions from folks, kind of in that one-on-one conversation of what kind of feels right, but also a lot of questions. You know, as you unlock information, it begs more questions. And so you know, I think we need to have more conversation overall, but just getting some initial feelings from folks. And maybe the way to summarize it is that folks don't want us at this point, at least the conversations we have, to take what's on the screen off the table at this point. There's definitely desire to explore further. I would note too that some of our BAC members actually show up as impacts on some of these options, so there's also a lot to go through with that.
Yeah, I guess I feel like there's just been a lot of development projects that have been happening along West Broadway lately as well. So I think I'd just be curious to know, you know, what the sentiment has been from those building owners and the redevelopment that's happening.
Sure. Sophia, if I could maybe also offer up. So, we're just starting this engagement and really hearing that feedback. We have committed, to pull all of this together so folks can hear what other community members are saying as well, and be sharing that as well. I would just also offer up, as folks are hearing more about this and thinking about it and digesting, and I think as Nick and Sophia has also shared, that it does take a little bit to have some reaction to this, and we want to give that time and space. So Peggy, so I would also offer up that follow the kind of public coordinate mapping where folks are leaving messages, so you can kind of see how that conversation is evolving. And then again, we will also be summarizing a lot of this work too and sharing it back to the community, because I agree, it's like, how are other people taking this in and thinking about it, and it'd just be good for, I think, everybody to be understanding and hearing that too.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We've had a
Brett.
lot of conversation with a lot of the businesses here. Sorry, Jason.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm done.
No, thank you. I got a chance to stop here. I'm looking at very interesting concepts here. As I'm looking at it, again, the potential of working with some of this additional space, again, really looking at the Hawthorne Crossing area specifically, and looking at the Hennepin owned property, that would be the 1300 block, 13 to 1400 block as well. Has there been thought of allowing for the widening, using that space? Let's just keep this quite blunt about this. West Broadway has not been really utilized in quite some time. This is a grand opportunity to move some things and actually move some things around. Has there been some thought about potentially even widening Broadway in certain places? The only major impediment, of course, is Davis Center. That's pretty much locked in for where that's at. But on the north side of Broadway, and I'm just going to stay with that statement of Davis Center, because even the 600 block, could be, 800 block, that the large white building just across from the Cup parking lot, there's some wiggle room in the grand scheme of things, so maybe thinking about even the potential of widening West Broadway in that area. Could that be something that could be put on the table as well?
Say more about that. I think, Brett. Like, what to increase pedestrian space, to increase green space, to
increase space for both flow of traffic as well as the train and everything else. I'm looking at the 21st, section, and this is the first time I've seen this, and this is eye-opening, to say the least. I'm even trying to get my head wrapped around just understanding how that train would actually work inside that neighborhood that has some of the most challenging public safety issues right now. And if I'm hearing this correctly, and I'm hearing some of the conversations I've had with some of the BAC members as well as other people who are concerned about the restriction of flow of traffic on Broadway, who are looking at alternatives. I'm even quite concerned about what their thoughts are right now. But I think this does provide an opportunity, thinking about Broadway itself. Again, there are some things that can be played around with the exception of Davis Center and 1200 block, of course. But there are some other opportunities that we could really think about, trying to get some additional easement so we can actually expand Broadway and go from there on the north side. South side, not so much, but on the north side of Broadway, there are some ways that we can reimagine how that could look. So it's just one of those things that if we're going to put everything on the table, let's try to figure out how we can put that. Yep, let's put it on the table.
Yeah, and I would offer too, and this is kind of responding to Peggy Sue too, is in some of these initial conversations, especially in this area, safety especially, you know, kind of the whole gamut of what safety means. Um, had a lot of conversation with folks along those lines, from just um, how traffic drives and what that means and how you navigate that, to just, you know, thinking about things like eyes and presence and lighting and challenges that exist today and how you navigate that and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's all needs to be part of how we pick solutions moving forward.
Yeah.
Catherine, did you have another comment or question to make?
I just wanted some clarity from Sophia. Uh, is the option of rerouting automobile traffic around West Broadway, is that on the table? I wasn't sure if I heard you
Yeah.
when you were discussing 21st.
Yeah, so
So-
and Nick can go
Yeah.
more into
I can walk through real quick, Sophia, and we probably don't have them teed up. They're really hard and they start crashing us as we bring them up. But
I can bring it up quick.
as you go into the website, and Sophia's going to bring them up, and we can go through them real quickly here. I won't spend a lot of time on them because there is so much detail, but we have a lot of different operational options or alternatives to look at. What we showed you was just two of the alternatives out of at least five. And you know there could be a whole universe of options in between those five we're showing, but we have options where we have the one direction of traffic on West Broadway with the light rail with bidirectional operation on West Broadway, and then have it as like a one-way pair where 21st becomes the other direction, similar to like what they have in Lake Street, where let's say eastbound traffic stays on West Broadway. Westbound would go up Lindale and then go down 21st, and then they catch back up around Irving. We also have one where we split the traffic and the train between West Broadway and 21st, so kind of split everything up there. And they're all just for to digest to see what the different options would be. So what we're showing here, what Sophia just pulled up here is the an option here which I just discussed, which is eastbound traffic stays on on West Broadway with the light rail turning and being on West Broadway and having that station near Emerson and Fremont. And then what happens is the westbound traffic goes up Lindale to 21st and then connects back in at Irving. So this is an alternative where we keep the light rail together, split the traffic operations between the two.
Okay, I was just curious about that. And is there a split ownership between 21st and West Broadway?
Yes, the county owns, the county is the owner of West Broadway. The city owns 21st. So there would have to be some kind of redesignation between, you know, a city route and a county route if this was an option or alternative that was used.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Yep. You want to pop to the next
Nick,
one, Sophia? Yeah, go ahead.
can I ask just a really quick question that when you look, I'm looking on the website at all these different examples. And even though like the routes look pretty much the same coming up north on Lindale, some of the Walgreens parking lot
Yeah.
views look like there is an impact, and then others don't, even though everything else looks the same.
And what
Or
that has to
less.
do, Jason, is if you look at each one of them, it'll be the left turn lane, whether it's there or not. For instance, since the traffic is going eastbound here, there would be no northbound left turn lane onto West Broadway, so we don't have to widen the road out for that, so there's no impact on Walgreens. So, but if we were to make that turn and have a left turn lane in there, it starts widening out, so then that's where we are showing a potential impact to Walgreens.
Oh, I see.
So there's
Okay,
little
gotcha.
nuances in there, little geometric things that change things up on us as we start looking at them. So it's a good catch.
And I think, Jason, that's also a really good example of interpreting the pink because right now, whether it's an inch or a foot or 15 feet, the building shows up as pink. And in some cases where there's pink, additional design work might be able to solve for it, but that's not all cases. So that's the project staff really wanted to be, what's the word? Is it conservative?
We're conservative, so we're showing impacts. We haven't rolled up our sleeves all the way to completely avoid. We did the best we could, but they're very conservative opinions too. When you see the pink, that if it looks like we're touching it, then we're showing it as pink. But there, if it is just a minor impact to that building, there might be some design things that we could do to limit that. So, and so I guess in conclusion, we just showed you 2 sections. There's 7 sections in total. Each one of those sections, I believe, has at least 2 alternatives to it, so you can see, how those alternatives impact things. And so we're happy to come back again. I'm going to put in that pitch again. Come and visit us at an open house, and let's kick these drawings around a little bit and just see them side by side. I think it really is helpful, and on a larger scale. And then we're always happy to come back and discuss these in more detail and look at options. But they're really to see in context how we can get operationally in a route, whether it's a West Broadway route or a Lowry route. So,
is there any way Sophia, is there any way that you could send an email out to the whole CAC list that just like has a list of the Minneapolis open houses, just so we know where all of them are, and if people, to.
Yes, I believe I sent the flyer with the initial committee packet, but I will send it again.
Sorry, I might have missed it. I apologize if I missed it, but I just feel like it would be good to have.
Yeah, no, and we really want everybody, we do want everybody to come. So I'll try to do it while we're talking.
Yeah. One of those cases, Jason, where we have a lot of information out there and we know it. So that's we're trying to get out in every avenue, but making sure everybody catches it.
Thank you.
If there's more questions from the committee, we definitely want to take them now. And if
Brett's hand is up, but I'm not sure if he has another question or comment, but we're more than open to hearing it.
Nope, I think I hit it the wrong way, so I'll take that off.
It's all good. Thank you.
I don't think we answered Adam's question in the chat about the raised versus at grade. Did I miss that?
No, we did not talk about that. I didn't even see it. There's a question in the chat that says, did we 100% drop the conversation of raised versus grade for light rail? If everything's on the table.
I would say 100% we did not drop it, but I think as we've discussed before, it's not. We still have visualization showing how elevated would fit at least down West Broadway and what it would look like in a couple of locations. So far right now, the general feedback we're getting from our project partners, I mean, just operationally, I think we've discussed why we feel that it really takes the light rail away from the community and makes it not part of the community is one thing operationally, but I think some of the other impacts where it's visual or just in the context of how it fits within some of our project partners haven't really preferred it. So I mean we're not bringing it forward as a suggested staff option, but it's not 100% off the table either. There's still a chance.
We've heard in conversations with folks from a few business owners that operate from their second story about that, as well as just kind of the impact to being able to see facades and things. That was that's been kind of a theme that we've heard quite a bit about as we've gone through this area. But Nick already answered the first part of the question.
Yeah, and this is Ken. I'll just throw in, anytime there's a vertical change, there's always going to be accessibility issues when
Yes.
you have to deal with elevators and out of order elevators, and that's always going to be a concern for the community of those with disabilities.
So this is Adam. I just want to point out that we are against elevated here, but we are for elevated when it gets to the hospital with the big flyover bridge. Coupled with, we talk about removing it from the community, but we move it a whole block away from the center of the light rail stop would be a block further into the neighborhood, away from the shopping. So, okay.
And you know, North Memorial is an example of, if we didn't have to fly it over, we wouldn't.
No.
But it's the technical challenge of the parkway being low already, bridges being high, and just kind of the infrastructure of the area. I mean, we unfortunately can't keep the light rail at grade, because you can't like kind of go up, like go way down real fast and come up real fast, and you're just citing the station where you're trying to deal with a lot of geometry. So we do employ a structure where you need it, and there are cases where elevated or partially elevated stations are necessary. But I would say a Metro Transit operating principle is to avoid them if possible.
Where is Robbinsdale at currently with? I know there was a lot of kerfuffle a couple months ago about the city not loving the router impacts. Where are they at now?
We're continuing to work with the city to kind of address the concerns, just like we would, you know, anywhere. And you know, we'll hopefully continue to progress that discussion. You know, our goal is to, you know, hear what the design direction folks would like to see, and continue to refine and work towards solutions. So, but yeah, a lot of work to do in Robbinsdale.
Looks like they're already leveraging their position with the Connect Blue Line now and their federal connection. So we'll see what happens.
Anything else to add to this discussion? Jason, you're also welcome to take Robbinsdale questions if you want, but don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, well, at that last open house we had, there were a lot of people there. It seemed like, just like any of the events that we've had, there's feedback from all over the place. But I know that the city council is still asking lots of questions. I've seen questions from the city manager about different things. So I think there's a lot that's being addressed. Like you said, I mean, there's a lot that still needs to get done. I haven't heard, I mean, a few people have mentioned like elevated in Robbinsdale, but it hasn't been a huge, I haven't heard it as like a big outcry of like, this is exactly what we want. We want it's more about like, how is it going to change traffic flows? Lots of like pedestrian safety questions, a lot of elderly people that live in and near Robbinsdale. So how are they going to get around? And just, I mean, pretty standard stuff, but yeah, it seems like there's still a lot to do.
Sophia,
Mm-hmm.
If West Broadway is selected, it seems to be more business focused. I mean, most of West Broadway is already businesses, a few residential, what have you. Is it more apropos for the BAC to be making those final decisions as opposed to our group, where Lowry is more focused residential when we're talking about that? So
It's all different perspectives, Catherine, and that's why both the BAC and CAC advise the corridor management committee. Is why you have the co-chairs from both committees going to give their reports, because there's perspectives that come from both committees that are valuable for our decision makers as they kind of weigh these options and make plans to go forward. Because while businesses might affront West Broadway more than Lowry in some ways, you're a block over, there's residents that are going to those businesses, working at those businesses, and getting on transit to get around the region. And so, I think from the outreach team, it's really important that we have very strong communication with those that we might be impacting directly through construction easements, potentially acquisition, all of that kind of stuff. That anybody that's in that situation deserves our full attention. But this isn't a project just for a block, right? It's a project for the entire neighborhood and the community. And so that's what the CAC also brings. And we have folks on this committee that represent a whole bunch of different groups that have various needs and goals and constituencies and answers and expertise. And I think that full package coming together to give our policymakers a full gamut of what the community is thinking about is absolutely necessary. So, we got to give the businesses a lot of focus too, but it's really that holistic feedback that really helps you make the best decisions. If that answers that question.
That works.
We have about 10 minutes in our standing time. I will maybe let folks ruminate on their questions a little bit more. And if Jason, if you're okay, we can move on to Sam's update. And then obviously if there's folks that want us, talk a little bit more at the end, we can give that time.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the time. It's been great to hear the conversation, and just want you to know that the puppy that we just got on Saturday was sleeping the whole time until I came on here and decided to do puppy craziness. So if you see me moving around, it's because we've got a little one scampering at our feet needing attention here too, but we'll make this quick. So part of the conversation that we had tonight is like, how do we begin to think about how we evaluate any of the options inherent to the West Broadway alignment or Lowry as we go forward? So I just wanted to share with you tonight that the team is thinking about that. What we really want to do is, as we get into community more and hear more of the feedback, as folks begin to look at the possibilities, the options, the potential impacts and benefits, is really bring that into the conversation and thinking about the evaluation framework. So we do have our project goals. We do have some criteria that we're looking at, but then really how does it get measured? How does it become a metric and that begins to reflect community values? So just wanted to share that we're in that process, and our hope is that we bring that towards, we bring that for consideration and discussion in December to all of the advisory committees to say, we heard from community members, this is really what they shared with us in terms of priorities. That begins to help us frame up some evaluation criteria that really speaks to, again, the values and the thoughts that community members are bringing forward. I would offer up that we can have that more conversation in December, kind of more in depth, but we would also bring that evaluation criteria into the draft report that we would, that we're looking at December to release, and that also would go under public review. So within that draft report, we would make that, here's what we think kind of makes sense for the criteria to get us to understand which corridor serves the community best in terms of the principles, and have community members weigh in on that. Does it make sense? Does it resonate? Does it really truly reflect their values, and as we move forward as well? That would be part of the 45-day comment period. So when the draft report is released, that's embedded in there as well. Community members can weigh in on that. We will take that feedback and then incorporate that as part of the final report that would come out in March of next year as we're looking at that. So I just wanted to give folks a heads up as well as an update on where we are, and just really knowing that we really want to lean into the community conversations over this next month and bring that forward to you in December in terms of what we're hearing, and then how can that be best reflected as evaluation criteria moving forward. Any questions on that or comments? Okay, a lot to think about. So I don't know what number we're at. So it's maybe the 8th or 9th plug to continue to be with us as we move through this work. This is a culmination of almost 14, 15 months of work in terms of what's being shared at these workshops, and the conversations that we're having with community members and residents and businesses to really kind of get their thoughts and values and reflect on what's best going to serve the community, and reach out to us too, as you have the opportunity to review the materials and have questions. We're here to be a resource to you as well. So with that, I'll kick it back to Jason and Sophia.
Thanks, Sam. And to Jason's request, after this meeting, I will send out the flyer to the whole committee. Please share it with your neighbors and encourage them to come, as Sam just said. So next meeting is December 1st. You see that there's a little asterisk on that date. As staff has been kind of looking at the dates for the draft report and when that would be released. And looking at the time, finishing up the community workshops, making sure we have a lot of feedback, incorporating that into the report, having time for review and all that kind of stuff. We're knowing that we're not going to be ready the first week of December. CAC is actually, usually our committees line up, but Wednesday happens to be the first day of the month. And so we would like to actually push back CAC 2 weeks, if possible, to the week of the 13th. That will better ensure that basically all the information is ready to share with you. And the draft report is probably available for public consumption. I think if we hit the December date, we wouldn't be ready. So if the committee would be willing to entertain, we'll be still, early-ish in the month, but as kind of pushing it forward a little bit. So if the committee would entertain that move, I think it'll end up resulting in a much more robust committee meeting.
Sophia, did you say
Sounds
the
good.
13th? That's a Monday.
The week of the 13th, the 15th.
It would be the 15th, yeah. So that week, so that it'd be we'd basically try to realign so that CAC, BAC, CMC are all on the same week of the 13th. So yeah, the 15th for this group.
Got it. Thanks.
15th works for me. Does anyone, when is the CMC meeting that month for December? Is it pushed back too?
It'll either be that Thursday, or we're finding that Friday morning that, like last month, tends to work well for a lot of the policymakers. So we have to cite it exactly, but it would probably be later that week, that Thursday or Friday.
So like the 16th or the 17th, but after the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, works for me if it works for everyone else.
That actually works better for me. So,
hey,
I'm very
Yeah.
pleased to have a date change.
This is Adam. I won't be able to make it, but that's fine. You guys can, that's fine.
Okay, it's never perfect. We know as we go into the next year, we've kind of mentioned that the first week often falls on a lot of challenging dates. So second week in the future might already be better, but this is actually even a little bit different. So thanks thanks for being willing to accommodate. We just want to ensure that there's good discussion and new information and that it's ready for you all.
We got a couple of other thumbs up, so hopefully overall it works well.
Cool. Jason, I'll turn it to you for any final thoughts. I know sometimes you'd ask the committee for summary of things that you want to go to CMC, whatever you want to do at the end of the meeting, and then whenever you're ready, we can adjourn. Nothing else from project staff, but we're happy to answer more questions if there are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people on this call, so if there are other questions that people have or comments that they want to make after we've looked through some of this stuff, please feel free. I would implore you to go to the website and look into some of the details on I mean, we looked at 2 examples, but there are 7. So we looked at 2 of the 7 and they all kind of have a similar level of detail where you're like drilling in with different options. So try to get a view of those so we can have a better informed opinion on what's going on when we talk to the community and bring our feedback. And then I guess, yeah, I mean, as far as comments to the CMC, is there anything, I mean, from my standpoint, you know, really it was reviewing this material around anti-displacement, around some of the Minneapolis design decisions and feedback around that. Is there anything specific that we're looking to get feedback, or this group is looking to get feedback to the CMC that I can provide?
Yeah, Jason, could you find out from a financial standpoint whether or not there's going to be any extra effort for the new infrastructure funds that are available, especially the ones that have been promoted by Pete Buttigieg, related to highways that have separated minority neighborhoods? So there's special funding available for that, whether or not anyone is looking into the possibility of those funds being available for this project.
Yeah.
What board are these ones questions for?
So this is for the larger CMC, which includes the chair, the Met Council, Hennepin County, all of the mayors from all the different communities. So it's just it's a similar discussion. It's just a larger group of people.
Gotcha.
Seems like we're good. So, Catherine, I'll for sure bring that up in addition to just giving them the update on our conversation today. And then just, you know, again, thanks everyone for your time and attention and the great questions and comments. And we will see you on December 15th.
Thanks all.
Thanks, staff.
Thanks everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving since we probably won't see you.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.